Everybody, how are you doing today? It's very nice to have you here. And today I want to speak a little more about freedom, surrender, and trust, and also about no separation and embodiment of presence in today's world. These are the themes of our upcoming 3-week programs that is beginning this Sunday, April 3rd. And I want to remind you that if you are enjoying watching these videos, please subscribe, like, and share. That really helps us growing our YouTube channel. And most of all, it makes these videos more available so more people can benefit, more people can enjoy watching these. And also to let you know that at the end of this video, I will do a practical guided meditation on how to be present with the challenges that arise in today's world. So freedom, surrender, and trust really go hand in hand. There is no freedom without surrender and trust. There is no surrender without trust. There is no trust without surrender. And when I say freedom, I mean a true independence from the past. I mean a true independence from the patterns of the past. We are all aware that when past arises, our attention so often gets drawn into that. And that is true before and after awakening. So, when I speak about freedom, I'm speaking about really realizing a true independence when we are not affected or acting on the patterns of the past. And when I speak about surrender, which, is so powerful, is so beautiful when we really take that in, that surrender is not, it doesn't have any external signs. Sometimes we mistake that. We believe surrender looks certain way. We have to behave certain way. We have to dress certain way. We have to eat certain way. This is not surrender. Surrender is an inner affair. It's an inner happening. And when I say surrender, I mean really the measure of surrender is the amount of time we spend in our devotion to truth, and really the amount of time that the mind is truly resting in the heart. And when I say heart, I mean capital H, I mean our true nature, I mean presence, consciousness, our true nature. So moment by moment by moment, that is the true measure of surrender. That is the true measure of our devotion to truth. However, often we need to start still with the object-subject relating, which is devotion to truth. That is a measure of surrender also. And when I speak about trust, trust is so key. There is no awakening without trust. There is no surrender without trust also. And when I say trust, I mean trusting presence, trusting our true nature, trusting our true nature more than we trust the patterns of the past or the mind. And that sounds so very simple, right? It sounds so very simple, and yet, in your own experience how challenging that is oftentimes not to follow, or how challenging it is not to follow the patterns that arise or the trains of thoughts that arise. It's very difficult, to do that at times. And also, so often we are used to what arises, and we really indiscriminatively believe that that's who we are, right? So trust is trusting presence more than you trust the mind, then you trust the patterns of the past. And there's also a human element of trust. If we have been wounded in some way, if we had experienced trauma in the past, if we had difficult human experiences around trust, that also is going to come into play when you are working with a teacher, when you are working through your own ability to be here, when you are working through your ability to trust what is here, or even to trust presence. All these elements are very key. And I also want to speak in this 3-week intensive, which, again, is designed both for our returning students. And I already recorded a video on this more, essential piece, emptiness and love. But it's also designed for our newer students as well. And I will be speaking about, no separation, and not just speaking about it, but really making sure that you have the actual experience of that you understand that it's not just a concept, no separation, that it's an actual experience in which you know the difference between the mind that describes the world for us and the actual experience of presence. Mind, object, duality, from here to there, and presence, which is unbroken, endless, always here, and there is no separation. So I wanted to take a moment right now to switch gears a little bit. That's another theme of our that I will be speaking about in our program. So much is going on in the world these days. And we, of course, all are affected by that. Just to name a couple, climate change, the war in Ukraine right now, challenges that really, even though they may be, especially the war, a little far away, but still we are all, I am hearing from many of you, very affected by that. How do we remain open, vulnerable to the world, not separating, not closing down, and yet how do we remain present? And I want to invite you to take a moment, and always with these guided meditations, or when you do your own inquiry, it's always good to start just by noticing your body, noticing sensations in your body, keeping your eyes open. And choose a particular event or events right now that really cause a challenge for you, be it in the world or in your life in general. And take a moment to let yourself experience and notice that challenge on the level of sensation in your body. For example, my family lives in Poland. I grew up in Poland. I'm very acutely aware of this geopolitical situation, Poland, Ukraine, Russia, all the other countries. And of course, that has some effect on me also. And so sitting with, what does that bring up when we hear, when we watch, when we read about this? And the challenge is in a moment that when you are engaging in the world and when things are challenging or difficult, what arises for you can be very quickly overwhelming. And then we tend to get lost in the emotion, lost in the thought, lost in the experience. And the reason I am sitting like this with you, because I want to encourage you to take the time to actually step out of that reactivity, not shut down the world, even though sometimes we have to really manage how much information we take, right? But not shut down the world, but instead, step out of the reactivity and just simply the mental, emotional reactivity, and just simply become aware on the level of sensation of what is present. And as you become aware of it, you might notice that, eventually these sensations are starting to relax a little more. And maybe first of all, what you notice, that you can be here while these sensations are present. And then, of course, we sit with that. Notice your feet on the ground, notice the weight of your body where you are sitting. Notice your arms and your hands. Support the nervous system and brain in its ability to experience what is present. Good, good, beautiful. And as you do, eventually you're going to start to experience a shift. We are not doing that, it's just natural. And that shift is a movement away from the past and into the present. And you may experience different perception. Maybe the room is brighter, maybe the colors are more visible, maybe your body starts to relax more, maybe the mind is quiet, or however else you experience that. Good, good, beautiful. So with a really very short period of time, we are back here. We are able to be here while present to what arises for us, what we are faced with in today's world. So I will be speaking about this and a lot more in our upcoming 3-week program, and I want to invite you to join me.